My son sold the family restaurant while I was in the hospital. Then he found the notebook his father left behind. When Evelyn Carter unlocked the back door of Carter's kitchen every morning, she still expected to hear her husband humming somewhere near the stove. Daniel had been gone for 7 years. 7 years was long enough for the city to repaint the crosswalk outside, long enough for 3 different coffee shops to open and close across the street, long enough for their grandson Noah to go from a little boy drawing dinosaurs on napkins to a teenager who barely looked up from his phone. But grief did not move according to city schedules. It settled in familiar places and waited. For Evelyn, it lived in the steel prep table Daniel had insisted they buy secondhand because a restaurant is not a museum. It lived in the chipped blue mug he used to drink coffee from before sunrise. It lived in the notebook he had kept for years in the locked bottom drawer of the office desk, a thick black book filled with supplier names, recipes, numbers, and private thoughts Evelyn had never read. Carter's kitchen was not fancy. It sat on the corner of Hawthorne and Bell in a working-class neighborhood where teachers, mechanics, nurses, construction workers, and retirees came because they knew exactly what they would get. Fried chicken crisp enough to crack under a fork, meatloaf with onion gravy, biscuits that Daniel had once described as good enough to make a grown man call his mother. And on Sundays, peach cobbler that sold out before 2 in the afternoon. The restaurant had been Evelyn and Daniel's life. They opened it when their son, Michael, was 6. At the beginning, they had almost nothing. The dining room had 12 mismatched tables, the kitchen hood rattled when the wind blew, and the old cash register sometimes had to be hit on the side to open. Daniel cooked. Evelyn served, cleaned, kept the books, ordered supplies, and learned every customer's name. Michael grew up in that restaurant. He did homework at table 7. He slept in 2 pushed-together booths when his parents worked late. At 10, he learned to roll silverware. At 12, he washed dishes. At 16, he swore he would never work in food service again. Daniel laughed. "Good," he said, "then you'll know you chose whatever comes next." Michael did choose something else. He went to college, earned a business degree, moved downtown, and built a career in corporate sales. Evelyn and Daniel were proud of him, even when his visits became shorter and his opinions about the restaurant became sharper. You need online ordering. You need to raise prices. You need to stop giving free meals to people who say they're short this week. You need to renovate. You need to think like a business. Daniel would usually smile and say, "We do think like a business. We just also remember we're feeding people." Michael hated that answer. He believed the restaurant could make far more money if his parents stopped treating it like part business, part community center, part emergency shelter. Evelyn understood his frustration. There were years when Carter's kitchen barely broke even. Daniel had forgiven tabs that should not have been forgiven. Evelyn had quietly slipped grocery money to employees whose rent had taken everything. They had let a dishwasher sleep in the storage room for 2 weeks after his landlord changed the locks. Michael saw waste. Daniel saw people. Evelyn spent most of her marriage standing somewhere in the middle. After Daniel died of a sudden stroke at 59, the restaurant nearly closed. For 3 months, Evelyn could barely walk into the kitchen without crying. Every surface felt like evidence of a life that had vanished too quickly. Employees covered shifts. Customers brought casseroles to a woman who owned a restaurant because nobody knew what else to do. Michael offered to help sell the place. "You don't have to keep doing this to yourself," he told her. Evelyn sat in the dark dining room after closing, staring at the chair where Daniel had done paperwork. "It isn't doing this to myself," she said. "It's what we built." Michael's jaw tightened. "Dad is gone. I know that. Sometimes I'm not sure you do." The words hurt, but Evelyn knew what he meant. Eventually, she reopened. Not because she could not let Daniel go, but because she realized Carter's kitchen had become larger than either of them. 12 people depended on it for work. Regular customers depended on it as one of the few affordable places left in the neighborhood. The restaurant was woven into so many ordinary lives that closing it felt less like ending a business and more like tearing out a piece of the block. So Evelyn kept going. For 7 years, she ran the restaurant without Daniel. She became better at things she used to leave to him. She negotiated with suppliers. She learned the new point-of-sale system Michael had insisted on installing. She created catering packages. She raised prices carefully. She stopped extending open-ended tabs but created a small fund that covered meals for customers in genuine trouble. Michael still complained. He visited twice a month, usually on Sundays with his wife, Laura, and Noah. He loved his mother. Evelyn never doubted that, but love became complicated when mixed with fear. Michael worried constantly about her health, her money, and the restaurant's future. He saw the cracked tiles, old wiring, tired booths, and narrow profit margins as signs of disaster waiting to happen. Evelyn saw memories. That difference became sharper after she turned 67. One evening, Michael stayed after dinner while Laura and Noah went home. He sat across from Evelyn at table 7, the same table where he had done math homework 35 years earlier. "I need to ask you something," he said. That tone usually means you already think you know the answer. "I'm serious." "So am I." He glanced around the dining room. "How long are you planning to do this?" Evelyn knew what he meant. "As long as I'm able." "That's not a plan." "It's enough of one." "Mom, you work 6 days a week." 5.5. "That is not better." She smiled. Michael did not. "You're almost 70. I'm 67. Exactly. Evelyn leaned back. "What are you afraid of?" He looked at her. "That I'm going to get a call from the hospital because you collapsed in the kitchen." The answer softened her. "I take care of myself. You take blood pressure medication and forget lunch because the fryer breaks." "That happened once. Last month." Evelyn folded her hands. "Michael, the restaurant gives me a reason to get up every morning." "You have family." "I know." "You have us." "I know that too." "Then why do you talk like this place is the only thing keeping you alive?" Evelyn looked toward the kitchen. "Because sometimes people need more than love, they need purpose." Michael looked wounded. "So being my mother isn't enough purpose?" She closed her eyes briefly. "That is not what I said." "It sounds like it." "Being your mother is part of who I am. It is not all of who I am." Michael looked away. Evelyn recognized the expression. It was the same one he had worn as a teenager whenever Daniel told him something he did not want to hear. Finally, he said, "A developer contacted me." Evelyn went still. "What developer?" "Weston Properties." She knew the name. Everyone in the neighborhood did. Weston had been buying older commercial buildings and replacing them with luxury apartments, pharmacies, fitness studios, and chain restaurants. "Why did they contact you?" "They know I'm your son." "That does not answer my question." Michael hesitated. "They want the building." Carter's kitchen occupied the ground floor of a 2-story brick building Daniel and Evelyn had bought 18 years earlier. The upstairs had once held offices, but was now mostly storage. Evelyn's voice cooled. "The building is not for sale." "I know." "Then tell them that." "I did." Michael paused. "They made an offer anyway." "I don't care." "You haven't heard the number." "I don't need to." 1.8 million. Evelyn stared at him. The number was far beyond what she had imagined the property was worth. Michael watched her reaction. "That is life-changing money." "For who?" "For you." "I already have a life." "You know what I mean." Evelyn stood and began gathering empty coffee cups from the table. Michael followed her with his eyes. "You could retire." "I don't want to." "You could travel." "I don't like airports." "You could buy a condo near us." "I like my house." "You could stop worrying about payroll and plumbing and whether the freezer is going to die." Evelyn stacked the cups. "I don't spend much time worrying about the freezer." I do. She looked at him. That sounds like your problem. His face tightened. Dad would at least consider it. The cup stopped in her hands. Michael knew immediately he had gone too far. Mom, do not use your father to win an argument with me. I didn't mean. Yes, you did. She carried the cups toward the kitchen. Michael stood. I'm just trying to protect you. Evelyn turned. From what? From being trapped here until something happens. This is not a trap. To you. The words hung between them. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. What does that mean? Michael rubbed his forehead. It means this place has controlled our family for my entire life. She stared at him. He continued before he could stop himself. Every holiday had to work around the restaurant. Every vacation got canceled because somebody quit. Dad missed my championship game because the cook didn't show. You missed Noah's school play because a pipe burst. Everything has always come second to this building. Evelyn's face changed. Michael saw it and hated himself, but years of resentment had already found the opening. You think I don't remember what we sacrificed? She asked. I'm saying maybe it's enough. Enough for who? For all of us. Evelyn laughed once, but there was no humor in it. There it is. What? You're not worried only about me. That is not fair. You want me to sell because this place still makes you angry. Michael's eyes flashed. I want you to sell because it's an old restaurant in a neighborhood that's changing, and you're working yourself into the ground to keep it alive. It is alive. For now. Evelyn's voice dropped. Go home, Michael. Mom. Go home. He left angry. Evelyn spent the next hour wiping counters that were already clean. The next morning, she found an envelope under the office door. Inside was a formal offer from Weston Properties. $1.8 million. She tore it in half. Then she tore it again. For several months, nothing more happened. Business continued. The lunch rush filled the booths. Noah started working Saturdays as a busboy because Laura said he needed to learn responsibility. He complained constantly, but secretly liked the cash tips. Evelyn's closest employee was Renee Thompson, the kitchen manager. Renee had started at Carter's Kitchen 21 years earlier as a waitress after leaving an abusive marriage with 2 young children and almost no money. Daniel had trained her on the grill. Evelyn had helped her find an apartment. Now Renee was 54, tough, funny, and the only person in the restaurant who could tell Evelyn to sit down without starting an argument. You look tired, Renee said one Wednesday afternoon. I am tired. Different kind. Evelyn waved her off. I didn't sleep well. You haven't slept well since Reagan was president. That is dramatic. You married Daniel, dramatic came with the package. Evelyn smiled. Then the smile disappeared when a strange pressure tightened in her chest. She gripped the counter. Renee stopped laughing. Evelyn. I'm fine. You're gray. I am not gray. You are absolutely gray. The pressure became pain. Evelyn tried to take a breath and could not get enough air. The next thing she remembered was lying on the kitchen floor hearing Renee shouting her name. She had suffered a mild heart attack. Mild, the doctor explained, because the damage was limited. There was nothing mild about the terror on Michael's face when he arrived at the hospital. He stood beside her bed with his coat still on, his hair disordered, eyes red. I knew this would happen, he said. Evelyn was too tired to argue. Laura stood behind him. Noah hovered near the door, pale and frightened. I'm okay, Evelyn whispered. Michael's mouth tightened. No, you're not. The doctor recommended at least 6 weeks away from work, medication changes, cardiac rehabilitation, and strict limits on stress. Evelyn immediately asked when she could return to the restaurant. Michael closed his eyes. The doctor smiled patiently. Not tomorrow. Next week. No. 2 weeks. Mrs. Carter. Michael turned away. Renee came later that evening with a get well card signed by every employee and half the regular customers. We've got the place covered, she said. Evelyn squeezed her hand. Do not let Michael change anything. Renee laughed. I don't take orders from men in expensive shoes. Michael, standing near the window, heard her. He did not laugh. Evelyn was discharged 4 days later. Michael insisted she recover at his house instead of alone. For the first 2 weeks, she was too weak to resist. Laura prepared low-sodium meals. Noah brought her tea and pretended he was not checking whether she was breathing. Michael worked from home more than usual and watched her as though she might explode if he looked away. At first, Evelyn found his attention touching. Then it became suffocating. Where are you going? He asked one morning when she put on shoes. For a walk. Wait for me. I can walk around the block by myself. The doctor said supervised exercise. The doctor said cardiac rehab. Same idea. It is absolutely not the same idea. Michael followed her anyway. They walked in silence. Halfway around the block, he said, you could have died. Evelyn kept walking. I know. I don't think you do. I was the one on the floor, Michael. He stopped. So why are you still talking about going back? She turned. Because one frightening day does not erase my entire life. He looked at her for a long moment. What if the restaurant is the thing that kills you? Evelyn's expression softened. What if fear is the thing that kills me first? He looked away. Neither changed the other's mind. During Evelyn's recovery, Michael became more involved with Carter's kitchen. At first, it made sense. He handled invoices, reviewed payroll, spoke with the insurance company, and helped Renee navigate the temporary changes. Evelyn gave him access to the business checking account so he could pay suppliers. She gave him the office keys. She even signed a limited power of attorney, allowing him to handle financial matters while she recovered. She did not read every page closely. That mistake would haunt her later. Michael told himself he was helping. He told himself that every late-night spreadsheet proved what he had been saying for years. The restaurant was fragile. Food costs were up, repairs were constant. The building needed a new roof within 2 years. The old walk-in cooler had been patched so many times that the technician wrote, "Replace soon," in capital letters on the latest invoice. Then Weston Properties contacted him again. This time the offer was $2.1 million. Michael deleted the email. The next day they called. He said no. A week later they sent an updated proposal, including relocation assistance for tenants and a flexible closing date. Michael read it 3 times. He imagined his mother in a condo near his house. He imagined not getting another hospital call. He imagined paying for home care if she ever needed it. He imagined her traveling, gardening, sleeping late. He also imagined something he did not admit even to himself. Freedom. For him too. No more emergency calls about broken refrigeration units. No more Sunday arguments. No more childhood memories tied to the smell of fryer oil and his father saying, "I know you have a game, son, but customers are waiting." Michael loved his father. That did not mean he had forgiven him for everything. He contacted Weston's attorney. Hypothetically, he said, what would a sale require? The attorney explained. Michael listened. 2 weeks later, he told Laura. She stared at him across their kitchen. You cannot sell your mother's building. I'm not selling anything. You are talking to lawyers. I'm finding out options. Does she know? No. Laura put down her glass. Then you know this is wrong. Michael became defensive. She almost died. I was there. She is going back the second the doctor allows it. Probably. And nobody is stopping her. She is an adult. She is scared and stubborn. Laura shook her head. You sound exactly like her. Michael ignored that. The power of attorney gives me authority over business assets during her recovery. Laura's face changed. You looked into whether you can do it. I looked into whether I can protect her. That is not what I asked. Michael stood. Do you know how many times that restaurant came before me growing up? Laura's expression softened, but only slightly. This is not about your childhood. Maybe it should be. No, it should be about whether your mother agreed to sell. Michael walked out of the room. But Laura's question followed him. Did she agree? No. Would she ever? Probably not. Michael convinced himself that was exactly why he had to act. He did not see himself as stealing. He saw himself as making the hard decision nobody else could make. That is how betrayal often begins. Not with someone saying, I know this is wrong. But with someone saying, I know what is best for you better than you do. 3 weeks later, Michael signed a letter of intent with Weston Properties. He did not tell Evelyn. Renee found out before she did. A man in a navy suit arrived at Carter's kitchen on a Tuesday morning, carrying a measuring device and asking to inspect the upstairs. Renee blocked the hallway. Who are you? He handed her a business card. Weston Properties were conducting preliminary site measurements. For what? He hesitated. The acquisition. Renee stared at him. What acquisition? The man realized too late that he had walked into a family war. Renee called Michael. What did you do? He stepped out of a meeting. What are you talking about? There is a man here measuring Evelyn's building. Michael went silent. Renee's voice dropped. You sold it. No. That pause said yes. I did not sell anything yet. You are negotiating behind her back. She is recovering from a heart attack. She is not unconscious. You don't understand. I understand plenty. Renee. No, you listen to me. Your mother trusted you. I am trying to keep her alive. Then try asking her what kind of life she wants. Michael hung up. Renee almost called Evelyn immediately. Then she stopped. Evelyn had cardiac rehab that afternoon. Renee told herself she would wait until evening. That delay changed everything. At 5:30, Evelyn arrived unexpectedly at the restaurant. Renee nearly dropped a tray. What are you doing here? I was bored. You are supposed to be resting. I have rested enough to qualify as furniture. Evelyn smiled. Renee did not. Evelyn noticed. What happened? Nothing. Renee. The kitchen manager looked toward the office. Evelyn followed her gaze. A stack of documents sat on the desk. On top was a folder bearing the logo of Weston Properties. Evelyn's smile vanished. She walked into the office. Renee followed. Evelyn, sit down first. What is this? Renee closed the door. Michael has been talking to them. The room became very quiet. How long? I don't know. Evelyn opened the folder. The first page was a letter of intent. Her eyes moved down the document until they reached Michael's signature. She read it again. Then again. This is not possible. Renee stood beside her. I called him. Evelyn looked up. He signed this. And yes. He cannot sell my building. Renee hesitated. He says the power of attorney lets him negotiate. Evelyn's hands began shaking. He said what? I'm sorry. Evelyn sat down hard in Daniel's old chair. For a moment, she could hear only the hum of the office refrigerator. Then she noticed the bottom drawer. The locked drawer. Daniel's notebook was inside. She had not opened it since his funeral. Her gaze stayed on the drawer, as if her husband might somehow explain what her son had done. Then the back door opened. Michael walked in. Renee moved toward the office door. Maybe I should. No, Evelyn said. Michael appeared in the doorway. The color drained from his face when he saw the folder open on the desk. Mom. Evelyn looked at him. What did you do? He stepped inside. I can explain. That sentence means you already know you should not have done it. Please listen. She lifted the document. You signed an agreement to sell this building. It is not the final sale. You signed an agreement. I was trying to create an option. For who? For you. Evelyn's eyes filled. Do not insult me by saying you did this for me. I almost lost you. So you decided to take away something I love before I could die and inconvenience you. Michael recoiled. That is not fair. Fair. Her voice rose. You used the authority I gave you because I trusted you after a heart attack to negotiate the sale of my property behind my back. I was going to tell you. When there was a real offer on paper. There was already a real offer, I tore it up. You didn't even think about it. I did not need to. That is the problem. Evelyn stared at him. Michael continued, years of fear and resentment spilling out together. You never think about anything except keeping this place exactly the way Dad left it. Renee moved toward the door. Evelyn said, stay. Michael looked at her. You are risking your health for a restaurant that is falling apart. It is not falling apart. The roof needs replacing, the cooler is dying, margins are terrible. We are profitable. Barely. And that gives you the right to sell my building. No, your heart attack gave me the responsibility to make decisions when you wouldn't. The words landed like a slap. Evelyn stood slowly. My illness did not make me a child. I did not say that. You did not have to. Michael rubbed his face. I cannot do this again. Do what? Wait for another call saying you are on the floor. Evelyn's anger faltered for 1 second. Then Michael said the sentence that broke something deeper. Dad already gave his life to this place. I'm not letting you do the same. Evelyn became still. Renee whispered, Michael. But it was too late. Evelyn's face emptied. Get out. Mom. Get out of my restaurant. I am your son. Then act like one. Michael stared at her. She pointed toward the door. You are no longer authorized to access my accounts, my office, or this building. Tomorrow morning, I will call an attorney and revoke every document I signed. Mom, please. Leave. He did. Renee locked the door behind him. Evelyn stood in the office breathing hard. Then she sank back into Daniel's chair and began to cry. Not because she might lose the restaurant. Because for the first time in her life, she was afraid she might have already lost her son. The next morning, Evelyn sat in a lawyer's office with Renee beside her and learned that anger did not cancel signatures. Her attorney, Margaret Chen, read the document slowly. The letter of intent is not the final purchase agreement, Margaret said. That is the good news. Evelyn waited. The bad news is that your son agreed to an exclusivity period and accepted a deposit on behalf of the business entity. Evelyn's stomach dropped. What deposit? $50,000. I never received $50,000. Margaret looked at the attached bank records. It went into the restaurant account. Evelyn turned to Renee. Renee shook her head. I didn't know. Margaret continued. It appears some of it was used to pay overdue invoices and the property tax installment. Evelyn closed her eyes. Michael had not stolen the money for himself. Somehow that made the betrayal more complicated instead of less. He had used the developer's money to stabilize the restaurant while secretly moving it toward a sale. What happens if I refuse to sell? She asked. Weston could demand the deposit back immediately and may attempt to recover certain due diligence costs. Whether they could force a sale is another question. I do not think so, based on what I have seen, but litigation could be expensive. Evelyn laughed bitterly. So my son tried to save me from financial stress by creating a legal fight. Margaret did not smile. I recommend we revoke the power of attorney today and notify Weston that Michael no longer represents you. Do it. They did. By noon, Michael received the notice. He called Evelyn 6 times. She did not answer. Laura called once. Evelyn almost ignored that too, but finally picked up. Hi, Laura. I'm sorry, Laura said immediately. Evelyn sat at her kitchen table. Did you know? There was a pause. I knew he was talking to them. Did you know he signed something? Not until afterward. Evelyn closed her eyes. Why didn't you tell me? Laura's voice broke. I should have. That is not an answer. I thought he would come to his senses. Then you were recovering, and every time I tried to push him, he said I didn't understand what it was like to almost lose you. Evelyn stared at the table. You were afraid of making things worse. And yes. So you let them get worse quietly. Laura began crying. And yes. Evelyn's anger softened just enough to hurt. Thank you for telling me the truth. I am sorry. I know. Michael is falling apart. Evelyn's jaw tightened. He made a choice. I know. I am not responsible for making him feel better about it. I know that too. They ended the call. Evelyn sat alone for a long time. The hardest part of setting a boundary with someone you love is that love does not disappear when the boundary becomes necessary. She wanted to call Michael. She wanted to scream at him. She wanted to hear his voice. She wanted to ask whether he had eaten. She wanted him nowhere near her. All of those things were true at the same time. For the next 2 weeks, Evelyn focused on recovery. She returned to cardiac rehab. She walked every morning. She let Renee run Carter's kitchen without appearing every day to inspect everything. She hired a temporary bookkeeper to review the accounts. The review revealed something unexpected. Michael had been right about one thing. The restaurant was more financially fragile than Evelyn understood. Daniel had once handled building maintenance with a kind of stubborn improvisation that kept problems from appearing on paper. After he died, Evelyn had continued the same habit. Patch the roof, repair the cooler, delay cosmetic work, move money from catering to cover a slow month, pay herself less when costs rose. They were profitable, but only because Evelyn worked far more hours than she paid herself for. The building had also increased dramatically in value, while the business itself remained modest. The numbers did not tell Evelyn she should sell, but they forced her to admit that refusing even to discuss the future was not the same as protecting it. That realization angered her because it sounded too much like Michael. Renee noticed. You look like you're arguing with somebody who isn't here. I am. Daniel. Myself. Worse opponent. Evelyn smiled faintly. They were sitting in the office after closing. The black notebook remained in the locked drawer. Renee nodded toward it. You ever going to open that? Evelyn stiffened. No. Why? It was Daniel's. That is usually why people read things people leave behind. He didn't leave it to me. He left everything to you. That is different. Renee studied her. You're scared. Evelyn looked up sharply. Of a notebook. Of finding out he wrote something you don't want to know. Evelyn's expression hardened. Renee stood. I'm going home before you fire me. You are impossible to fire. I know. After Renee left, Evelyn opened the drawer. The notebook lay exactly where it had for 7 years. Black cover, bent corner, grease stain near the spine. She picked it up. For several minutes, she simply held it. Then she opened to the first page. Daniel's handwriting filled the paper. March 4, new fryer finally installed. Evelyn says we cannot afford another surprise this month. Michael got accepted to state, pretending I am not worried about tuition. Evelyn laughed through sudden tears. She turned the page. The notebook was not a diary exactly. It was part business record, part recipe book, part collection of thoughts Daniel apparently wrote when the restaurant was quiet. There were notes about vendors. Buy onions from Lewis if within 12 cents, better quality. There were recipes. Peach filling, less sugar when fruit is ripe. Evelyn always adds too much cinnamon, do not tell her. She laughed again. Then she found pages about Michael. June 18, missed Michael's game tonight. He said it was fine. It was not fine, I could see it. I keep telling myself I am building this for him, but sometimes I wonder if that is what he wants. Evelyn stopped breathing for a moment. She read it again. A few pages later. Michael says he hates the restaurant. I told him good, then he will choose something else. Truth is it hurt. I thought he loved being here with me when he was little. Maybe he did. Children can love a place and still hate what it takes from them. Evelyn sat very still. The office seemed to shrink around her. She turned pages faster. There were dozens of references to their son. Michael's first college semester. Michael's internship. A fight after Daniel missed his graduation dinner because a gas line inspection ran late. One entry was written the week after Michael married Laura. Proud of him, more than I know how to say. He gave a speech about Evelyn and me working hard so he could have choices. Everyone clapped. I wanted to tell him the choices were the point. If he ever feels he owes this place something, then I failed. Evelyn covered her mouth. She could hear Daniel's voice in the words. She kept reading. Then she found an entry from 10 years earlier, 3 years before Daniel died. Weston people called again, offered $900,000 for building. Evelyn said absolutely, not before I finished reading the letter. I laughed, but I think we need to talk about it eventually. Not because I want to sell now. Because one day the building might become more valuable than the restaurant, and I do not want love for this place to turn into a cage for her or Michael. Evelyn's eyes filled. She had forgotten that earlier offer. Daniel had not. The next entry was several weeks later. Talked to Evelyn, went badly. She thinks I am imagining retirement. I am not. I think she is afraid that if we talk about ending the restaurant, we are talking about ending us. Need to find better words. Evelyn began crying. Daniel had tried once to discuss selling. She remembered now. She had shut him down. He never raised it again. Then she found the entry that changed everything. It was written 11 months before his death. Michael and I fought today. He says this restaurant mattered more to me than he did. I told him that was nonsense. I was angry because part of me knew why he believed it. I have spent 30 years saying I did all this for family, but if the family experiences the sacrifice as absence, I cannot demand gratitude for the intention. I need to apologize to him without explaining. Not, I missed things because we had bills. Not, you had food in college because we worked. Just, I should have been there more, you deserved that. Evelyn stopped. The page blurred. She remembered Daniel and Michael going fishing together that summer. She remembered them returning quiet but peaceful. Had Daniel apologized? She did not know. She turned the page. The next entry answered her. Talked to Michael, hardest conversation of my life. He cried, I cried, though if asked I will deny it. He said he knows I loved him. That was never the question. He needed me to understand love does not make every choice harmless. He is right. Evelyn pressed the notebook against her chest. For the first time since Michael signed the Weston agreement, she saw the betrayal from somewhere beyond her own wound. It did not excuse him. Nothing in Daniel's notebook said a frightened son had the right to override his mother's decisions. But the notebook revealed that Michael's resentment was not a recent excuse invented to justify the sale. It was an old injury. Daniel had known it. He had tried to repair it. Evelyn had not understood how deep it went. She kept reading until midnight. Near the end, the notebook changed. Daniel began writing more about Evelyn. She is stronger than she knows and more stubborn than is reasonable. If something happens to me first, she will keep the restaurant running because she will think stopping means betraying me. I need her to know that is foolish. Evelyn laughed and cried at the same time. The next lines were underlined twice. The restaurant was our dream. It is not her obligation. If keeping it gives her joy, keep it. If selling it gives her freedom, sell it. If giving it away somehow gives her peace, I hope she does that too. Buildings are tools, recipes are tools, money is a tool. None of them is family. Evelyn closed the notebook. She sat in Daniel's chair for a long time. Then she whispered into the empty office, "You could have said that while you were alive." Of course he had. She had simply not been ready to hear it. The next morning, Evelyn called Michael. He answered before the first ring finished. "Mom." His voice sounded exhausted. "I need to see you." "I'm okay." "At the restaurant after closing." "I'm okay." "And Michael." "And yes." This is not forgiveness. There was a pause. "I know." He arrived at 8. He looked thinner than he had 2 weeks earlier. Evelyn hated that she noticed. They sat at table 7. Neither spoke at first. Finally, Michael said, "I am sorry." Evelyn held up a hand. No explanation yet. He nodded. She placed Daniel's notebook on the table. Michael stared at it. "Dad's." "And yes." "I thought you never read it." "I hadn't." His eyes stayed on the cover. "Why now?" "Because I was desperate enough to take advice from a dead man." Michael almost smiled, then thought better of it. Evelyn opened to the page about their fishing trip and slid the notebook across the table. "Read." Michael did. His face changed. He read the entry once. Then again. His eyes filled. "I didn't know he wrote about that." "Did he apologize?" Michael nodded. "He did." "Why didn't you tell me?" Michael looked up. "Because it was between us." Evelyn accepted that. He read more. When he reached Daniel's final notes about the restaurant not being an obligation, Michael pressed his lips together. "That's what I was trying to tell you," he whispered. Evelyn's expression hardened. "No." Michael looked up. "You were trying to make the decision for me." He lowered his eyes. "That is different." "And yes." "I know." Evelyn leaned forward. "Your father understanding your pain does not make what you did acceptable." "I know." "You used my health as permission to take my choice away." "I know." "You lied by omission every day you worked for me while negotiating with Weston." "I know." "You accepted $50,000. His face tightened. "I used it for the restaurant." I know where it went, that is not the point. I know. Evelyn stared at him. For once, he did not defend himself. That mattered. Not enough. But it mattered. Why? She asked. Michael looked confused. You have told me the practical reasons. My heart, the roof, the money. I am asking why you believed you had the right. He looked down at his hands. For a long time he said nothing. Then he whispered, because I was angry. Evelyn waited. I was scared too, but I was angry. At me. At both of you. Her eyes narrowed. Michael's voice shook. When Dad died, everybody talked about the restaurant like it was this beautiful thing he left behind. People told stories about him feeding families for free and giving employees second chances and knowing everyone's birthday. Evelyn's eyes filled. He did those things. I know. Michael looked at her. But nobody told stories about him missing my games. Evelyn looked away. Nobody talked about you being too exhausted to come to parent night. Nobody talked about Christmas mornings that ended at 11 because you had to start prep. The restaurant became the saint in every story. He wiped his face. And I felt like a terrible son because I hated it sometimes. Evelyn's throat tightened. Michael continued. Then Dad died and you held on to it even harder. Every time I suggested selling, it felt like you were choosing it again. I was grieving. I know that now. I was trying to survive. I know. But... He looked at her. But I was still the kid at table 7, waiting for you to finish closing. Evelyn began crying. Michael did too. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Evelyn said, I am sorry. Michael stared at her. She continued before he could respond. I am not apologizing for owning the restaurant. I am not apologizing for loving the work. But your father and I did make choices that cost you things. We told ourselves every sacrifice was for the family, and sometimes we did not ask what the family wanted. Michael's face broke. Evelyn reached for a napkin, wiped her eyes, and gave a sad laugh. Your father apparently figured that out before I did. Michael looked at the notebook. He tried. Did his apology help? And yes. Did it erase it? No. Evelyn nodded. Good, then you understand what happens next. Michael swallowed. What happens next? My apology does not erase your childhood. He nodded. And your fear does not erase your betrayal. His eyes closed. I know. You will help my attorney return the deposit. And yes, if Weston charges fees because of what you signed, you will pay them. And yes, you will have no authority over my finances. And yes, you will not contact the developer on my behalf again. And yes, and you will stop telling yourself you were protecting me. That one hurt him. He looked away. Evelyn waited. Finally he said, I was protecting myself too. And yes. He nodded. I know. Evelyn took a breath. I am not ready to trust you. I understand. I love you. His eyes filled again. I love you too. That is why this hurts. I know. They sat together until the restaurant was completely dark except for the light above table 7. Before Michael left, Evelyn handed him the notebook. He looked surprised. Take it home tonight. Are you sure? No. He almost laughed. Bring it back tomorrow. I will. Michael carried the notebook home like something fragile. He read until 3 in the morning. Daniel had written about him far more than he expected. Not only guilt, pride. Michael landed first major account at work, called just to tell us, pretended casual. I could hear how happy he was. Evelyn cried after hanging up. I did not, obviously. Michael laughed through tears. Another entry. Noah born today. Michael looked terrified holding him. Good, means he understands the job. Then, Michael is a better father than I was in some ways. I am proud and jealous. He rearranges work for Noah's games. I wish I had understood sooner that showing up is not something children remember as a bonus. They remember absence as a fact. Michael closed the notebook and cried harder than he had at his father's funeral. At the funeral, there had been people to greet, papers to sign, his mother to protect, Noah to comfort. This grief had no job attached to it. He simply let it happen. Laura found him at the kitchen table. She sat beside him. What is that? Dad's notebook. He told her what Evelyn had said. When he finished, Laura asked, "What are you going to do?" Michael looked at the closed book. For once, he took a shaky breath. What she asked. The next day, Michael met Margaret Chen and signed an agreement accepting personal responsibility for any costs arising from the Weston negotiation that could not be covered by returning the unused portion of the deposit. He transferred money from savings to replace the portion of the deposit that had been spent on restaurant bills. It hurt. That was appropriate. He called Weston himself, with Margaret on the line, and said clearly that he had exceeded the trust his mother placed in him. The developer threatened legal action. Michael did not blame Evelyn. He did not say the restaurant was unstable. He did not say his mother was emotional. He said, "I made the decision, deal with me." Weston eventually accepted repayment of the deposit plus documented expenses and released the exclusivity agreement. The total cost to Michael was $38,000 beyond the return deposit. He paid it. Laura did not complain. But she did insist on one thing. You cannot turn punishment into another obsession, she told him. What does that mean? It means paying money does not make you good again. It makes you responsible for a financial consequence. Michael stared at her. You and my mother have apparently formed a union. We have dues. He laughed for the first time in weeks. Trust did not return with the repayment. For months, Evelyn and Michael spoke carefully. He called before visiting. He did not offer business advice unless she asked. When she complained about the cooler, he listened instead of saying, "I told you so." When she missed a cardiac rehab session because of a staffing emergency, he became angry, then stopped himself. What? Evelyn asked. He took a breath. I am worried. That is allowed. I want to tell you what to do. That is not. I know. She smiled faintly. That was progress. Evelyn changed too. The notebook had forced her to ask questions she had avoided. Did she truly want to run Carter's kitchen until she physically could not? Or had she confused continuation with loyalty? She started meeting with a small business advisor. Not Michael. Someone neutral. They reviewed options. Sell the building and close. Sell the business but keep the building. Lease the operation to someone else. Bring in a partner. Reduce hours. Renovate and expand catering. For the first time, Evelyn considered each possibility without feeling that Daniel was watching from somewhere disappointed. His notebook had released her from that fear. She also talked to the employees. Renee surprised her. You know I don't want to run this place forever either, she said. Evelyn stared. You were supposed to die at the grill. Renee pointed a spoon at her. Exactly the kind of unhealthy thinking we are trying to eliminate. They laughed. Then Renee became serious. I love this place, but love does not mean we freeze it in 1998. Evelyn looked around the kitchen. What would you do? Close Mondays and Tuesdays, expand catering, hire another manager, stop pretending you are free labor. That sounds expensive. So was your heart attack. Evelyn rolled her eyes. But she listened. By autumn, Carter's kitchen was operating 5 days a week instead of 6. Evelyn worked 4. For the first month, she hated every Tuesday. She would wake at 5:30 with nothing urgent to do. Then she discovered a morning walking group at the park. She visited Noah's soccer practice. She had lunch with Laura. She even took a 3-day trip with Renee to a lake 2 hours away. Michael did not say, "See, this is what I wanted." Evelyn noticed that too. One Sunday, nearly 9 months after the betrayal, Noah was clearing table 7 when he found the black notebook under a stack of menus. He picked it up. "Grandma, what is this?" Evelyn looked over. "Your grandfather's notebook." Noah's expression changed. "Can I read it?" Evelyn hesitated. Then she looked at Michael, who was sitting nearby. Michael did not answer for her. That mattered. Evelyn said some of it. Noah grinned. He spent the next hour reading the pages Evelyn marked with sticky notes. He laughed at Daniel's recipe comments. Then he found an entry about the day he was born. His face softened. "He wrote about me." "Of course he did," Evelyn said. Noah looked at his father. "Dad, you were scared holding me." Michael smiled. "Terrified. You dropped me." "No. Almost. Absolutely not." Evelyn laughed. For a moment, the 3 generations sat at table 7, with Daniel's handwriting between them. The restaurant no longer felt like a wall separating Evelyn and Michael. It felt like what it had always been at its best. A place where people could sit down long enough to tell the truth. The real test came the following winter. A storm dropped nearly 9 inches of rain over the city in 2 days. At 3 in the morning, Renee called Evelyn. "The roof is leaking." "How bad?" There was a pause. "Bring boots." Evelyn arrived to find water dripping through the ceiling near the back prep area. Buckets covered the floor. One section of plaster had collapsed. The electrical panel near the storage room had been shut down as a precaution. The fire department inspector ordered the kitchen closed until an electrician and structural contractor cleared it. By sunrise, Evelyn stood in the dining room staring at yellow caution tape. For years, this was exactly the sort of crisis she would have attacked without sleeping. Call the roofer. Move the food. Find temporary refrigeration. Argue with insurance. Protect payroll. Keep everyone calm. Her phone was already in her hand when Michael walked in. Renee had called him without asking. He looked at the ceiling, then at his mother. Evelyn braced herself. He did not say, "This is what I warned you about." He did not mention Weston. He simply asked, "What do you need?" Evelyn stared at him. "What? What do you need me to do?" The question was so different from "I know what you need" that she almost cried. She looked around. "Can you help Renee move the dry goods out of the back storage room?" "And yes." "And call Noah, tell him school is still more important than helping here." Michael smiled faintly. "And yes." "And do not call a developer." He actually laughed. Understood. The damage was worse than expected. The roof replacement could no longer wait. Electrical repairs, ceiling work, mold prevention, and lost business would cost more than $100,000, even after insurance. Evelyn had the money. Barely. But spending it would consume most of the restaurant's reserves. For 3 days, she studied the numbers. Michael said nothing. On the 4th day, she called him. "Come over." He arrived expecting another repair assignment. Instead, Evelyn placed Daniel's notebook and a folder of financial projections on the table. "I am thinking about selling the building." Michael's face went completely blank. Evelyn almost laughed. You can react. I am trying very hard not to react incorrectly. That may be the wisest thing you have ever said. He sat down slowly. Why? She appreciated the question. Not finally. Not I told you so. Why? Because I don't want to put another $100,000 into this building, just to prove I can keep it. Michael listened. And because the neighborhood is changing, whether I like it or not, the property value is now doing more work than I am. He nodded. And because your father wrote something that annoyed me. Michael smiled. That narrows it down very little. Evelyn opened the notebook. Buildings are tools. Michael's smile disappeared. She continued, I have spent 7 years treating this building like a promise to him. It wasn't. Mom, you don't have to sell because of the roof. I know. I can help with the repairs if you want. I know. And if you want to keep it, I will support that. Evelyn looked at him. He meant it. That was the moment something inside her finally shifted. Not because he agreed with her. Because he had learned how to let the decision belong to her. I don't want to close Carter's kitchen, she said. Okay. I want to move it. Michael blinked. She pulled out another folder. Renee's daughter worked for a community development organization that owned a renovated commercial building 6 blocks away. A restaurant space had recently become available. Smaller dining room, new kitchen, lower maintenance costs, long-term lease, parking in the back. Evelyn had toured it twice without telling Michael. He looked through the photographs. This is nice. I know. Really nice. I know. Why are you looking at me like that? Because I expected you to find something wrong with it. Michael smiled sadly. I think I used up my lifetime supply of unsolicited opinions. Unlikely. He laughed. Then his expression became serious. What about this building? I am going to sell it. To Weston. No. Michael looked surprised. Why not? Because I don't like them. That is not generally how investment decisions are made. It is how mine are made. He smiled. Evelyn had received another offer from a regional developer, planning mixed-income apartments with ground-floor retail. The offer was slightly lower than Weston's last proposal, but the company had agreed to preserve the original brick facade and include 2 below-market commercial leases for neighborhood businesses. Michael reviewed the offer only after Evelyn asked him to. This time, he sat beside her instead of across from her. This clause needs clarification, he said, pointing to a section. Why? It gives them too much flexibility on the closing date. Write down the question, I'll ask Margaret. He did. That became their new way of working together. Michael advised. Evelyn decided. Sometimes she followed his advice. Sometimes she did not. Neither treated disagreement as betrayal. The building sold 4 months later for $2,200,000. Evelyn cried when she signed the final papers. The attorney paused. You can still take a minute. Evelyn shook her head. I'm not changing my mind. She looked around the old office one final time after everyone left. The desk was empty except for Daniel's blue mug and the black notebook. She picked up both. For 38 years, she had believed Carter's kitchen lived at the corner of Hawthorne and Bell. Now she knew better. The final night at the old location became an unofficial neighborhood reunion. Former employees came back. Customers who had moved away drove across town. People brought photographs from birthdays, retirement dinners, first dates, graduation lunches, and ordinary Tuesdays. Renee created a wall labeled things that happened here. Someone posted a photograph of Michael at age 9, sleeping in a booth with his face on a math worksheet. Noah laughed so hard he nearly dropped a tray. Michael stared at the photograph. I remember that night. Evelyn stood beside him. You had a fever the next morning. Dad made me stay because you couldn't find a sitter. Evelyn's smile faded. I'm sorry. Michael looked at her. You don't have to apologize for every memory now. I know. Some of them were good. I know that too. He looked back at the photographs. I loved this place. Evelyn blanked. Michael laughed at her expression. What? You spent 30 years telling us you hated it. I hated parts of it. So did I. He looked around the crowded dining room. I think that was what I couldn't understand when I was younger. I thought loving something meant you weren't allowed to resent what it cost. Evelyn nodded. I thought loving someone meant they would automatically understand why you made the choices you made. Michael looked at her. We were all very bad at this. Your father included. Especially Dad. From somewhere behind them, Renee shouted, He's dead. Stop blaming him for everything. The room erupted in laughter. Evelyn laughed until she cried. Later that night, after the last customer left, only family and employees remained. Evelyn stood near the kitchen door. She had planned a speech. She abandoned it. I thought I would know what to say, she began. Everyone quieted. She looked at Renee, who was already crying. At first, this place was just a way for Daniel and me to pay bills. Then it became the place where we raised Michael. The place where we met most of you. The place where people came when they were hungry, lonely, celebrating, grieving, or just didn't want to cook. She paused. For a long time, I thought keeping the building meant keeping all of that. Michael lowered his eyes. I was wrong. She looked around. We are taking the recipes. We are taking the sign. We are taking table 7, even though Michael says it is structurally questionable. It is, he said. We are taking it anyway. People laughed. And we are taking Daniel's terrible blue mug. More laughter. Evelyn's voice broke. The rest can belong to someone else. Renee wiped her face. Evelyn lifted her glass. To what happened here? Everyone repeated it. And to what happens next? They drank. The new Carter's kitchen opened 7 weeks later. The sign from the old building hung above the entrance, freshly repaired but not repainted. Evelyn wanted the scratches left visible. Table 7 sat near the front window. The first morning, Daniel's blue mug rested on a shelf in the office. The black notebook stayed in a drawer, but not a locked one. Business was stronger than expected. The smaller location lowered operating costs. Catering grew. The newer kitchen reduced repairs. Evelyn hired an assistant manager and finally began paying herself a real salary. She worked 3 days most weeks. On Tuesdays, she volunteered at a community cooking program for teenagers. Michael joked that she had retired from one form of unpaid labor to begin another. Evelyn told him to mind his business. A year after the heart attack, the cardiologist told her she was doing well. Keep exercising, keep taking your medication, keep managing stress. Evelyn smiled. My son is learning to manage himself, that helps. The doctor did not understand the joke. Michael did. Their relationship healed slowly. There was no single day when Evelyn decided she trusted him again. Trust returned in evidence. He did what he said he would do. He asked before acting. When Evelyn gave him a key to the new restaurant, he hesitated. Are you sure? And yes. I don't need access to anything financial. It is a door key, Michael. I know, I'm just establishing boundaries. She laughed. You are becoming unbearable in a new direction. He smiled. Noah began spending more time at the restaurant too. At 17, he announced that he might study hospitality management. Michael nearly choked on his coffee. No. Noah frowned. What? You have choices. I know. You do not owe this restaurant anything. I know. Your grandfather would say. Evelyn started laughing. Michael stopped. What? She pointed at him. You hear yourself. Laura laughed too. Michael groaned. Noah looked between them. What is happening? Evelyn said, your father is discovering that every generation finds a new way to panic about the next one. Noah rolled his eyes. I just said might. Michael took a breath. Okay. Noah waited. Michael tried again. If you choose hospitality because you want it, I will support you. Evelyn smiled. Better. Michael pointed at her. Do not grade my parenting. You graded mine for 20 years. That is different. It is absolutely not. They argued until everyone was laughing. 2 years after the betrayal, Evelyn turned 70. Michael and Laura planned a surprise dinner at Carter's kitchen. Renee pretended there was a plumbing emergency to get Evelyn there. You used a plumbing emergency as bait? Evelyn asked after everyone shouted surprise. It was the only thing guaranteed to make you come immediately, Renee said. The dining room was filled with friends, employees, customers, and family. On table 7 sat a wrapped package. Michael handed it to her after dinner. What is this? Open it. Inside was Daniel's notebook. Evelyn frowned. I already own this. Look inside. Michael had carefully scanned the entire notebook and created copies for himself, Noah, and Laura. The original had been professionally preserved in a simple protective cover. At the back, behind Daniel's final page, Michael had added one sheet. Evelyn read it silently. Mom. Dad wrote that love does not make every choice harmless. I learned that from you in the hardest way possible. I told myself I sold the restaurant because I was afraid of losing you. That fear was real. But I used it to justify taking away your right to choose. I turned love into control and called it protection. You did not owe me forgiveness. What you gave me instead was a chance to become someone you could trust again. Thank you for making me earn it. And thank you for showing me that changing your mind is not the same as admitting someone else had the right to make the decision for you. I am proud of what you built with Dad. I am even prouder that you learned when to let the building go. Love. Michael. Evelyn could not finish without crying. She looked up. Michael's eyes were wet. You wrote in his notebook, she asked. His face went pale. The copy. She stared at him for 2 seconds. Then she laughed so hard she had to sit down. You should have seen your face. That was cruel. You deserved a little fear. 2 years later. I have a long memory. Michael hugged her. This time, Evelyn did not stiffen. She held him tightly. I forgive you, she whispered. He closed his eyes. She felt him exhale against her shoulder. It was the first time she had said the words clearly. Not because the sale attempt no longer mattered. Not because she believed his reasons had made it acceptable. She forgave him because the person holding her had spent 2 years refusing to hide from what he had done. He had paid the financial cost. He had accepted the emotional distance without demanding that she shorten it. He had changed his behavior before asking her to change her feelings. That was what made forgiveness possible. Later, after the party, Evelyn and Michael sat alone at table 7. The same table where he had done homework. The same table where he had first asked her to sell. The same table where they had read Daniel's notebook together. Michael ran his hand over a scratch in the wood. You know, this thing really is structurally questionable. Evelyn smiled. So am I. He laughed. Then he became quiet. Do you regret not selling to Weston the first time? Evelyn's thought about it. Financially, Weston's offer might have been better. Emotionally, everything had become more complicated than numbers. And no, even though you sold eventually. And yes. Why? Because selling was not the betrayal. Michael looked at her. Taking the choice away was. He nodded slowly. Evelyn continued, I needed to arrive at the decision as myself, not as a patient, not as your mother, not as Daniel's widow, as me. Michael's eyes filled. I understand. I know you do now. They sat quietly. Through the front window, the neighborhood glowed under streetlights. The old location 6 blocks away had become apartments. The original brick facade remained. On the ground floor was a small pharmacy and a bookstore. Evelyn had walked past once. She expected grief. Instead, she felt gratitude. The building had done its job. So had she. Years passed. Evelyn eventually stopped managing daily operations and sold a majority share of Carter's kitchen to Renee and 2 longtime employees under a payment plan they could afford. She kept a small ownership interest and 1 non-negotiable privilege. Free peach cobbler for life. Renee called the arrangement extortion. Evelyn called it retirement planning. Michael never asked to own part of the restaurant. That surprised Evelyn at first. One afternoon she asked him why. He smiled. Because Dad said the choices were the point. She nodded. He had finally understood. So had she. When Noah graduated from college years later, he did choose hospitality management. He did not take over Carter's kitchen. Instead, he moved to another city and joined a hotel company. Michael was disappointed for approximately 6 minutes. Then he helped him pack. At Noah's going-away dinner, Evelyn gave him a photocopy of 1 page from Daniel's notebook. It was the line Michael had needed as a young man, and Evelyn had needed as an older woman. If he ever feels he owes this place something, then I failed. Noah read it. Grandpa really wrote this. And yes. He looked at Michael. You still cried when I said I was moving. That was allergies. Indoors. Very aggressive allergies. Evelyn laughed. One Sunday, many years later, Evelyn sat near the window of Carter's kitchen with Michael. Her hair was completely silver now. She walked with a cane because of arthritis, not her heart. Michael had gray at his temples and complained about his knees with the confidence of someone who believed he had invented aging. Renee had retired too, but still came in once a week to criticize everyone. The restaurant was busy. A young couple sat at table 7, with a toddler throwing crackers on the floor. Michael watched them. Dad would hate what they did to the gravy recipe. Evelyn smiled. Dad changed that gravy recipe 6 times and lied every time someone noticed. Michael laughed. Then he looked at her. Do you ever think about the night you found the Weston papers? Sometimes. I do too. Evelyn studied him. Does it still shame you? And yes. She nodded. That is probably healthy in small amounts. He smiled. I used to wish I could erase it. And now I think if I erased it, I would erase everything I had to learn because of it. Evelyn looked toward table 7. Pain is an expensive teacher. Michael nodded. So is family. True. He reached across the table and took her hand. I'm glad you didn't let what I did become the last thing between us. Evelyn squeezed his fingers. I'm glad you didn't ask me to pretend it never happened. They sat together while the lunch crowd moved around them. For years, Evelyn had believed the most important inheritance Daniel left behind was Carter's kitchen. Then she thought it might be the building. Then the recipes. Then the notebook. She had been wrong each time. The real inheritance was harder to name. It was the willingness to look at love honestly. Daniel had loved his son and still hurt him. Michael had loved his mother and still betrayed her. Evelyn had loved both of them and still refused to understand certain truths until life forced her to. Love did not make people automatically wise. It did not prevent selfishness, fear, control, pride, or mistakes. What mattered was what they did after the truth became impossible to avoid. Daniel apologized without demanding that Michael forget. Michael took responsibility without demanding that Evelyn forgive quickly. Evelyn learned to admit the restaurant had cost her son things without pretending those costs made the restaurant meaningless. They stopped trying to prove whose version of the family was correct. They made room for more than one truth. The restaurant had been a dream. It had also been a burden. Daniel had been a loving father. He had also been absent too often. Michael had been terrified of losing his mother. He had also used that fear to control her. Evelyn had been strong enough to keep Carter's kitchen alive. She had also been afraid to imagine herself without it. None of those truths canceled the others. That was what finally saved them. Not the old building. Not the money from the sale. Not even Daniel's notebook. The notebook only gave them words. They had to decide what to do with them. One evening, after Michael drove Evelyn home, he helped her up the porch steps. She stopped at the door. Michael. And yes, if I ever end up in the hospital again, you are allowed to pay my bills. He smiled cautiously. Thank you. You are not allowed to sell anything. He laughed. Understood. Not the house. Understood. Not the car. Mom. Not my furniture. I understand. Especially not my blue chair. That chair should have been condemned by federal authorities. Evelyn pointed a finger at him. This is exactly how it starts. Michael laughed so hard he had to hold the railing. Evelyn laughed with him. Then she hugged her son goodnight. Inside her house, on a shelf in the living room, Daniel's black notebook rested beside the old blue mug. Evelyn no longer kept either one locked away. Some memories needed protection. Others needed air. And some truths, once finally spoken, became the doorway through which a family could find its way back to one another.